But learning reinvigorates. Learning is renewal. Learning is change. How do we help churches learn better across the whole lifespan? See, I'm firmly convinced when you change the way people learn, you change the world. And vibrant, like I have never found a vibrant parish community or church community that didn't have a vibrant educational program or ministry or outreach or faith formation. I just have never said, they always go hand in hand. Because we have great worship, but people don't learn anything. Well, you don't have great worship. And they know they don't. So it's this systems kind of thing. But for me, learning is one of the ways into transforming churches. How do we learn better? And of course, learning has a performative piece to it. How do we live better because of what we're learning?
Hey, John. So one of the things I think about for the church-wide organization is how do we enhance our culture of learning? How do we have more of these kinds of conversations? Because for me, it's like, doesn't this sort of thing impact everything that we do and how we think about that work and how we go about trying to do it? I'm constantly looking for these kinds of conversations, and I'm always sort of amazed that it seems like we're so busy doing what we do, we never get around to some of these fundamental conversations about what's really happening. So
we're certainly entering a period in which innovation and design, experimentation are going to be our calling cards. We'll be trying a lot of new experiments to figure out what the new rules are in this world. We knew what the world rules were in the old model. As a new model emerges, what are the new rules? We're going to experiment. I mean, trust me, if I had the answers, I would give those to you at 9:05. Okay, but this is all going to lead us towards experiments. And so what kind of churches and how we build those churches and invest in those churches and create and innovate, that's where we are. And it's very much, at least in my experience today, it's very much a bottom-up process. It puts national organizations, it puts leadership, it puts seminaries in a very difficult position because it's not a top-down thing. It's how are we catalyst for the kinds of innovation that needs to happen so we can learn with the people that we're serving and create these experiments. If we had figured out these things, we'd be talking about the solutions today. But we're at that point where we have to experiment, research, we have to become research design houses that go out and then implement those and prototype them and get feedback from people to see what does this new church look like, because we do not know what it looks like. And every time I read a book that says, this is what the new church looks like, about halfway through you say, yeah, tell me the directions to go and how to experiment and learn what the new church looks like. Because anybody who tells you they know what the new church looks like, I'm always a little suspicious, even for an old guy. Other thoughts, questions?
In my own family, raising a child who's now 5, it's been really invaluable that we were lucky enough to get our son into a Lutheran preschool for daycare. It was 4 years. I mean, it's not an ELCA, but because we just don't have those around in the ELCA. And that's helped him just be really firm in Sunday school, kind of a little star with the other little stars who've also been to parochial school elsewhere. And, so I see that's at least going to help in my family.
Oh, yeah.
Who doesn't have that access. But I know that for my son, it's been really important. We can't do everything with him. We read with him a lot, but he watches a lot of videos.
Yeah.
And VeggieTales has been kind of boring to him, but
he's outgrown VeggieTales already.
Yeah, and he has discovered my old Davy and Goliath collection, because we used to have a bookstore right there, and I bought it all. And so that's been nice that he can, but maybe that can be brought to other kids.
Sure.
But where he's really locked in are things like Thomas, and it's a lot about friendship, and that's good. But churches could have their own version of Thomas, something,
Churches need to have, and I'm going to talk about this afternoon, digital platforms of faith formation. My son has a YouTube channel for my 4-year-old grandson. So he curates some videos that are acceptable for William to watch. And William can go from his Kindle Fire for Kids gizmo to watch these YouTube things. And they're great. Some of them are math ones, it's really cool. And he's really into math, he just got the math thing down. But this little, have you seen the Kindle Fire for Kids? It comes pre-stocked with things. It's very cool and it's really inexpensive for a gizmo for kids, very kid-friendly. Of course, at 4 years old, he probably could figure out how to code the Kindle. But I think about Mike is dealing with William, and I'm thinking, this is what churches need to be doing. Our discussion about curating. We're in the software business, not the hardware business. People already have the gizmos. How do we fill the software channels with high quality things that fit into life? See, the reorientation is, we put the people at the center of church and faith formation, and we ask the question, how do we serve you best? It's a game-changing question. It sounds so basic, but it's not. You're at the center. How are we in service to you? And one of the big things is, how do we do, especially with families, the kinds of content and experiences that fold into daily life, so they're not going to go to the parish faith formation website, but if I connect them from Facebook to there, doing things they automatically do every day, watching a YouTube video because I've curated our YouTube channel, I'm getting onto their playbook. I don't need them to be on my playbook. It's a whole mindset shift. It sounds so basic, but our practice is the opposite. I want to be where people are and resource them there, because they're going to see that we are a church in service to them. They're going to want to check out, who is this crazy church that's doing these things? That's the relationship. It's networking, it's connection, it's engagement, it's a new metric for churches.
I think maybe something on the order of Zoom could be helpful. At the library, I brought home, I found the highlights of Zoom, that TV show in the 70s.
Yeah.
People would know about it.
Yeah.
And my son watching it, because there was something about it that seemed so contemporary. The kids' clothes weren't really dated, and the girls all had long hair like many people now. And he started saying, we need to write in, because he was listening to this little jingle that he started having.
If somebody answers them, that would really be something.
He really, my husband and I were just cracking up. Gosh, look what we're doing. But that really resonated for him, and it's lost. I was glad to find it at the library. But it was interactive. So the kids were really getting into it, and at least for him, for my son, whose name is William, he just was. He related.
Yeah.
So
Fascinating.
that kind of activity is helpful.
Well, I was listening to what you had said about how congregations touch networks, and so I think it's. I'm beginning to wonder now, in terms of the congregation I belong to, how is it that we are networking and touching the lives of the community? I think really that's, you really got me thinking about that. And not just think about how many come to worship on Sunday, but beyond that. And I think about, we network with an organization that has a service on Tuesdays, and so we're touching people in that way. And then we network with other community congregations through a feeding program. So if you think about it in that way, then how can you leverage that? How can you build on that? How can you multiply that in other ways? And so I'm very glad to get this information.
If every church looked out at Sunday morning and didn't see 100 people, but saw 100 networks, so that grandma sitting in front of me is on Facebook, and she's connected to all kinds of people digitally, but also people committed to the next door, the senior citizen, in her neighborhood. Every person is a hub. That diagram where I had the person in the middle and the groups around them, every person's the hub of a social network. If you treated the congregation that way on Sunday morning and thought, I don't have 100 people, I have a couple thousand people. How do I equip these people to interrelate to their network? And you see this phenomena. Remember the ice bucket thing? You know, people dumping ice buckets on their head, right? Well, how'd that spread? Because they advertised on TV? It was just all social, because friends had friends who had friends who had friends who had friends. And all of a sudden, everybody's being dumped. But it's just the way it works.
Thanks. I'd just like to challenge us to not hide behind YouTube. We've just finished talking about the urgent need for deep systemic reflection and change to remain whatever relevant means in this world. And I think simply translating a model into a different medium is an easy excuse that will never have the impact that we need. And so let's not let ourselves hide behind, let's turn Sunday school into YouTube videos and curate it, which might be one tool, but that's really the leaves on the very tips of the branches that are being, held up by these roots that really need examination in questions of systemic justice in our world and in our country. I think a conversation around which our church needs to be a player and might be the root of these systemic changes that we're talking about.
Point very well taken, well said. The difference between the change, the core change, and strategies and tactics.
Yes.
So, yeah, we need strategies and tactics, absolutely, because you can, I call this the Bernie Sanders problem. He's got the core. How do you do it? He may have all those ideas, but it's strategies and tactics. And I think we need that whole set. But you don't want to get a tactic, like we need a YouTube channel, and say, okay, now I got it. Now we're current. Well, come on, guys. It takes you 5 minutes to set up a YouTube channel. That's hardly systemic change. Now, it would have been if you created YouTube. Now, that would have been systemic change. But setting up a YouTube channel, technical fix. But well said. That's a good point.
I was just wondering your thoughts about preparation of rostered leaders, because we're in the midst of sort of this whole shifting too, but where does this happen or doesn't it happen? Or where have you seen it in seminary, rostered leader preparation?
I don't see it a lot. And so if I had a couple of recommendations,
Yes.
now it doesn't mean it's not happening. Not everywhere by any means,
Right.
but something that's often missing in seminary preparation is a solid emphasis on learning, education, faith formation as just as essential as worship. It's not more important than worship, but it's just as essential as worship, and it's just as essential as our mission, outreach, and work for justice. These are all connected. You can't pull them apart. So if our leaders aren't steeped in transformative learning, as well as transformative worship and transformative justice, we're not going to grow. And you can't, and we've said, but we can do it worship will do it. You can't do it in an hour a week at Sunday worship. I don't care if you are the best intergalactic preacher, you are once a century preacher. It's just not going to, all right, maybe Martin Luther King Jr. All right, so I'll make an exception, all right? But that was last century. The point is, you can't rely on Sunday worship as the only pillar. You need multiple pillars. And if you're not prepared in seminary, you certainly have enough time to really immerse yourself in the transformation that happens because of learning and education. And how learning and education is changing dramatically. That's the big shift. That has changed right in front of our eyes. So yeah, but remember, in the Roman Catholic world, I couldn't even get him to put a 3-credit course on religious education in the seminary because we have too much other stuff to study. Take one book of the Bible out and don't do a course on that. Let me do this. You know, like,
I can imagine the response to that.
you know, take out, you know, Maccabees and, you know, like, you know, something like that. You know, like,
In the world.
yeah, I know. It's just, we all have the same litany of woe. So far, so good?
Yes, thank you.
What I want to do this afternoon is some directions on where do we go. By no means will it address all these systemic issues, but at least from the learning faith formation side, what can that look like?
Thank you.
Steve, we're going, we have worship at,
Yeah, in
Let's do-
7 minutes, next door.
you should have a long walk.